There is a side of AI most people never see. A thin layer between us and something much bigger. Behind every interaction, a vast system is at work, operating at a scale nobody predicted, powering people, platforms, and products worldwide. A new foundation for an agentic future. This is where the future gets built.
Hey everyone.
Hey!
Oh, look, Jay has like no sleeves and shit. Like, look at this. All right, Simon, come on. We tried to get Simon. I know Simon can hit 100 million in ARR, but can't roll his sleeves up.
Look, it's because as a founder, you have to really lean into B2B sales. And I realized recently that I've kind of become the bit, and I worry that if I do the sleeves, it's going to feed into that.
Little tech. Well, I thought, open source, open sleeves.
Open sleeves.
Yeah, it goes together. All right, so first off, Jay, I want to start with you. Let's give people like a 2-minute bio intro to you, and then same with Simon, and then we'll get into the companies.
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Waterloo.
Whoop!
2008. It was with my co-founder Frank. We've worked on startups effectively ever since. And then at some point, sort of around the 2020-ish, we really got into open source, joined by our third co-founder, Dax. And I think the thing that we've sort of taken on as a team, as a company, is embodying the idea of open source. And to some degree, we believe that open source is still heavily underrated. And now, when I sort of look at AI and the impact that these models are having, it's very clear that the diversity that these open source models bring ends up being incredibly valuable, not just for sort of the local ecosystem or sort of sovereign ecosystem. It's effectively global. And I think to some degree, like we'd want to embody that sort of moving forward as well.
Cool. All right, Simon, we know that you've come from like the more vocational track, a la Toby Lutke. Why don't you tell us your story?
I came to the new world in 2013 to work for a little e-commerce startup in Ottawa called Shopify. And I spent about just shy of 10 years there working on the infrastructure team. When I started, it was a couple hundred requests per second, and when I left, the biggest peaks were around 1 million requests per second. So worked on all aspects of the infrastructure, even before you were there, Farhan.
I know.
Like, believe it or not.
Wow.
I know,
feel like
pre-Farhan.
You've somehow been at Shopify for 30 years, but like somehow we never overlapped.
Never overlapped.
Exactly.
And so I left Shopify in 21 and discovered that search was as much of a pain in the ass as I remembered it from my days at Shopify. And it dawned on me that there was a new way to build a search engine that could be astronomically like 10, even 100 times cheaper than other search engines that were currently in the market. And we launched in 23, and today we power Anthropic, we power Cursor, Notion, Harvey, Legora, and so on and so forth. And what all of these companies have in common is that they want to connect very large amounts of data to AI, right? If any of you remember the most frustrating experiences with AI, it's generally when it's not drawing on some document that you know exists, some email that you know exists. And so what Cursor does is connect every line of code via search to their agent. Legora, every legal document ingested is connected via Turbopuffer. Notion, every page indexed. And so many of you are puffing every day with the products that you use.
You know what's not connected to Turbopuffer?
Sorry?
You know what is not connected to Turbopuffer?
Shopify?
Shopify. Also, my angel check that like never arrived at the Turbopuffer offices.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
Right. The thing is, you were annoying enough without doing the angel check, so I was really worried about what would happen
It's true.
Yeah.
You're actually, to be honest, I was helpful enough without having to write a check that Turbopuffer was something I'm happy to recommend to lots of companies. Maybe one day even Shopify. But now that you actually rolled out those customers, I mean, Jay, you probably have a similar list of like amazing customers that are using OpenCode. Let's like talk about some of those.
Yeah. So we launched. This is sort of fun to go over. So we launched. Like the first public demo for OpenCode was last year in June at a DevTools Toronto meetup, which was a part of Toronto Tech Week. I think we had maybe 20 or 30 people in the room. Since then, obviously, there was some sort of numbers sort of shared, but I think we're close to sort of 8 million monthly active users. I think it was downloaded 6 million times last week.
Jeez.
We process close to 5 trillion tokens a day. That's about, in terms of some perspective, we're maybe about 20 times smaller than all of Gemini. And sort of in terms of our annual recurring revenue.
Why all the air quotes?
It's not annual because it hasn't been a year,
I
right?
see.
It's not recurring because they pay per token.
And it's not revenue?
It's not revenue because we'll see what the margins end up being. But that's at around sort of 25 million if we extrapolate it for a hypothetical year.
Amazing. These are amazing things, and I think one thing I noticed there, these are not random brands like that are down the street. These are global brands that everybody knows about from both of your companies, so it's amazing. We do use OpenCode at Shopify, Simon, so you should do a little bit more B2B selling a la this way.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, why are you not puffing?
Why are we not puffing? It's a good question. Actually, we bought a search company a year ago or so.
Also, you aren't paying us.
We are not paying you. It's also true. Hence the revenue quotes. Hence the revenue quotes. But actually, one thing I do want to hit on, because you guys are both founders. I'm a founder, right? My company got acquired by Shopify. And we talk about founders kind of doing everything, right? Like one of the interesting things about AI, there's a great quote from Mark Andreessen where he says, in this age of AI, imagine the founder could do everything. Because you now have an agent that can help you take away the toil from some of the things. And backstage, we were talking about founder-led selling. You said founder-led marketing.
Marketing, yeah.
Talk about that. Like, it's true. Like, when you ask me, hey, can you introduce me? You do this call, right? It's not like you introduce a salesperson. So tell me, what does it mean for a founder to get into the weeds and do like a discipline you don't actually know, right? You're not a craftsperson on sales.
No, I mean, at Shopify, I wasn't exposed to marketing or sales,
right.
or I've had to learn all of that. I think my philosophy on this is that I feel like I should be able to do a pretty good job as CEO. This is not true for every co-founder, but as CEO of the business, I feel like I should be able to do a really good job at every job in the company. It's my responsibility that sales works. It's my responsibility that marketing works, that security works, that all of these different, like engineering, that everything works.
You mean like 7 out of 10? Like, what do you mean by pretty good?
I mean, like, I think I should be like 90th percentile, right?
Okay.
On these different types of functions. Within the company, I don't think I'm 90th percentile in engineering anymore at Turbopuffer. Maybe 60th.
Or before even, maybe?
Sorry?
Maybe not even before.
This is why you guys didn't overlap, by the way.
We did overlap.
We did overlap.
Simon was in my team.
But then I left. So for me, it was very important to be able to do all these functions. And so initially, obviously, it was engineering, right? I built the first version and then brought Justine on. I thought Justine was the best engineer I ever worked with at Shopify, and she came on as co-founder. And it was just the two of us. And then someone had to go and do pricing. Some of us had to go start doing the sales calls. And I started doing that. And I loved it. Now I love B2B sales. I have a t-shirt that says, I heart B2B sales, that I thought about wearing today. And it was very important to me to just get good at it. I think this is also where I started getting the advice that you should hire someone to do sales. And I think my instinct was, how am I gonna know if this person is P99 or total bullshit unless I've done it for a long period of time, unless I've closed some $1 million deals, unless I've built the relationships. And also, I think that I can then discover what the authentic way to do Turbopuffer sales is. And this turned out to be a great, the person we hired that's now our head of sales was someone that I met in like a year before he actually came on full time. And he was the same. It was like, it sounds like you don't really need me right now. And that was sales. And so at some point, I was like, the company was like into tens of millions of revenue, and it was just me on the sales side, and I was like doing red lines and pricing negotiations and all of that, and fully drowning, and it was an incredibly difficult couple of months. And that felt like, okay, well now it's time to start bringing on people who've done this before, and support them instead. And so it was that, and then I moved on to growth and marketing. And it's very difficult as a founder to hire these functions that you've never seen before.
You don't understand, yeah.
You don't know. And so I think you have to fall in love with the game. And I think it really hit me, and this is why I didn't roll up my sleeves. It really hit me.
I think it was due to like bicep definition.
Also that, I'm very insecure about the precipitous fall off of my deadlift since having a daughter and a startup at around the same time. And so I think as CEO, then I moved from engineering into sales, and then built the sales team and the solution engineering team, right, the FDEs, and now I'm mostly in growth and marketing and supporting all these other different kinds of functions. And I think you just have to fall in love with it. And I feel like I can fall in love with anything as long as it makes Turbopuffer really great. And so what I've discovered then, one of the engineers recently said, I wish I knew engineering, Simon. I only know B2B, Simon. And it was like, it's like someone dropped a sack of bricks on me because I still identify as engineering Simon, not as B2B Simon. And now it's more of growth or marketing Simon.
Yeah, so Jay, tell me about your journey as a founder, and like are there sacred places that you don't go into in your company?
I guess I've sort of drifted away maybe from some of the engineering sides because there are a lot more sort of capable folks there, but our take is a little bit sort of similar, except on the sort of marketing front. I think we believe very strongly that marketing has to be led by sort of founders, but also, again, embodied by founders. So I think I'll sort of back up a little bit. At some point, it dawned on us that when you're an open source, your code is public, you live publicly, everything that you do is effectively public. If you don't embrace that, in some ways, you're doing yourself a disservice. So the concept that when we're building a global brand, when we're building for sort of call it, 10 to sort of 50 million developers that are out there, to be able to do that, we need to be as public as sort of possible, embody those values sort of publicly. The other aspect of this, and I think we've internally never had a good feel for how most tech companies do marketing. So, when we sort of run into most of the marketing folks, they're trying to roll out their playbook. Oh, let's write some blog posts. Let's do some SEO. Let's do some webinars. And we're like, those things, for the sort of scale that we're trying to get to, those effectively do nothing for us. And then on the flip side, we can't quite just go to a marketing agency and just be like, hey, just do all these things for us, because they don't quite capture the type of audience, the type of culture that we're sort of building. To be honest, we're chronically online. Most of our community is chronically online. If you're running your agents 24/7 and that's all you're sort of thinking about, there's a certain language that you sort of speak to folks that sort of resonate with that, and that took us a little while to sort of grasp and understand. And I think we talk about this internally all the time. You have to find your voice, especially when it comes to marketing. You have to find your voice. You have to find who you sort of really are on some level, and it has to come out naturally, because most people, I think they tap into that very quickly. The moment you're, especially I think the way we are sort of on Twitter all day, if you're not authentic in how you sort of carry yourself, most people capture that almost instantly. They capture the insecurities. They come through so easily, especially when you're online and as transparent as you are. And so there was a little bit of a shift, sort of embracing that, embracing sort of the goofy side, whatever it is. And again, not being sort of afraid to talk about, hey, our metrics are public. We're going to talk about the ups and downs publicly as well. And that ends up being something that people relate to on a personal level. The journey they sort of relate to as well. Again, this idea that we publicly launched OpenCode at DevTools Toronto last year, right? That's something that when I went back to sort of the event on Monday, it was another thing that relates to a lot of folks. They sort of look at that and they go, I can see how something like this could start small.
Yeah, I think one thing you're hitting on that's interesting is that like the founder-led sales or marketing, like the founder is the company, right? So this idea of like you having to figure out the authentic voice, like it is your voice, right?
Yep.
So having the founder be in those functions and interrogating, and sounds like there aren't any areas that you wouldn't want to go into because you're just like, I'm the founder, like let me go see how to solve this the OpenCode way, the Turbopuffer way. So Simon, I want to ask you a question. Why is Turbopuffer in Ottawa?
Because I'm in Ottawa, and
the founder is the company.
Look, I think Ottawa is great. It's an incredible city to raise a family in, and there are no distractions. It's just you and the internet and Eastern time zone against the world. I go to San Francisco maybe. Sorry?
That's a great way to put it.
I go to San Francisco every maybe 2 months. I go to New York probably about every month, where we have a large team. And what our customers care the most about is how we show up in Slack. That's where this era of sales is done.
Oh, like you have customers in your Slack.
That's very true, yeah.
Exactly. Like this era of sales for the native, like AI native companies is done in Slack and showing up to your customers as if they're part of your team. So I live where I can get the most focus and where my family is, and I think Ottawa has been phenomenal for that.
Amazing. Jay, why Toronto?
Yeah, it works. I think so. We're roughly 24 people now. We're all over the globe at this point. It's funny, a couple of days ago, I was spending some time we've got 2 folks in Australia, and just understanding a little bit of Australian culture. This, I think, comes back to this notion of, again, being sort of open source. We hire from the open source community. We're building something that's sort of global. I think physically being in Toronto matters to me as a person, but from a sort of brand perspective, we'd want to be sort of global. We'd want to attract sort of talent from everywhere. The part that I think is sort of worth mentioning is there are some cultural Canadian values that I think resonate well globally, maybe more so than, if you're insular from a specific part of the world. Let's call it like you're a Silicon Valley, San Francisco-based company, you're exporting some of the ways that you do work out of that tiny city. Maybe that doesn't necessarily resonate with everybody else. So if you're going around sort of parading the fact that, we're whatever 996 or whatever the sort of new number is, that maybe doesn't quite work when you're building a global brand. Again, that's not to say that you can't build a global product. It just doesn't make sense to export whatever San Francisco sort of culture is globally. Those are 2 sort of separate things. I think when we sort of look at how we sort of do it, it is what sort of Simon is saying, what personally sort of makes sense for you, and then from that point on, it's effectively global.
I would add one more thing to it, is that I think Silicon Valley has a very fast drumbeat, and every city has a drumbeat. Ottawa has a drumbeat as well. Like sometimes it's 3 p.m., I haven't had lunch, and it's rush hour.
There's rush hour in Ottawa?
Sorry?
There's rush hour in Ottawa?
Yeah, it starts at 3 p.m., yeah. I am completely oblivious to that. I work at the rhythm of the fastest companies in the world, of our customers, of Slack. Some people can create that rhythm of working, and it doesn't matter where in the world that they are. And some people have to be surrounded by that rhythm. I think there are very few people who can do that outside of the main metropolitans that have that default heartbeat. Shopify was an anomaly. Inside of that building, the heartbeat was as fast as it was anywhere in the world. But it takes a lot of power. And I think Turbopuffer's heartbeat is in Slack, and I think it doesn't matter where in the world you are. I think the other thing is that in Ottawa, no one gives a shit how much money you've raised. That's a huge advantage. In Silicon Valley, a lot of people play founder because it's very high status to raise money in San Francisco, but it can also be suicide depending on the kind of company you're trying to build. In Ottawa, I sometimes say you just have first principles in the forest, right? You have to sit down and think about what you're trying to do and what happens next, and not just what everyone else around you is doing.
Yeah. I'll add one thing to that, because I went to, I was the keynote speaker at the Y Combinator event in Toronto, because they were trying to get founders to move. Nice. And so they did this fireside chat with me, and then afterwards, the YC founders went up on stage, and people were asking them, do I have to move to San Francisco? And they said yes. And I went back from the audience, back onto the stage, grabbed the mic and said, no, you do not. Because there is a reason. Well, I mean, you can clap or not, but you don't have to move. You nailed it on the head. Like, yes, you have to have customers everywhere, right? If your customer was in London, you'd go to London. So the whole point is that your customers can be anywhere. You can hire great people anywhere. And yes, you should be part of that community. Fly there. You do not have to move.
But you have to go and understand the pace.
Yes.
Most people have never seen this pace in their lives.
Correct. Go there, do some 18-hour days, and then come back, and you'll see, and you'll get the feeling, and you'll hire people from there, and you'll have people from that experience. So a couple more questions for you guys. AI obviously is the thing that both of you kind of lopped into. How did you end up coming up with the idea for Turbopuffer, Simon?
I wanted to start a vape company.
Okay.
And then, no.
Hence the puffing?
Hence the puffing, yeah.
It needed to be fast.
Yep.
No. The way I came into it was that after Shopify, I spent some time with a bunch of friends' companies working with infrastructure, right? I'd worked at Shopify since I was 18. I'd barely seen the inside of another company, and I wanted exposure to others. And this search problem just kept coming up. And I remember that from my Shopify days too. Every project that touched search, like 90% of them failed. It was just so difficult to get it to do what you wanted it to do. And then I discovered this other source of pain where it was just so expensive. I was working with my friend's company, actually Toronto founder, and we were gonna search everything and do recommendations on it. It was gonna cost them 30 grand a month, and this was a company who was spending 5 grand a month on all their other infrastructure combined. So they just didn't do it. And I couldn't help myself but to sketch out a new architecture where everything was on object storage, and it had this architecture that Turbopuffer has. And it felt like it was possible to make a new set of trade-offs that you couldn't have made 10 years ago when I encountered those problems at Shopify for a search engine that would do this workload for $400 or $1,000, not $30,000. And I just got completely sucked into that project over the summer of 23. And then almost in exasperation, I launched it, where it was running in a Tmux instance on a single server somewhere on the cheapest GCP region, and just released it to the world. And then Cursor, which was a very small company at the time, reached out, and I just went straight to San Francisco, and they became our first customer.
I didn't know Cursor was your first customer. That's amazing.
First customer.
That's an incredible story.
Very cool. Yeah. So what about you? Why come up with OpenCode?
I'll sort of sum up what he was sort of saying, because it sort of resonates for us. We just thought we could do better. We looked at Claude Code when it sort of came out. We were steeped in the open source community. We basically knew every single sort of major open source contributor to most of these frameworks, at least that we were sort of a part of. And we just felt like these AI coding tools that were sort of being pushed on us on some level weren't coming from our sort of open source, the sort of open source developer community on some level. And I think when we sort of saw that, it just didn't make sense that the tool that you use every single day would be built by these model labs that, obviously they care about the model, sure, they care about the coding agent as well, but it didn't have the same love and sort of craft that we've had with the tools that we use every single day. So if you're a developer, you use Vim, NeoVim, you use VS Code, these are reliable tools. These are things that you can essentially work with for the rest of your life effectively. And when we started seeing some of these coding agents sort of come out, we realized that and there's a little bit of sort of AI slop there, and obviously, there's a different way people ship these things now. But granted, if this is a tool that you're going to use every single day, it has to be built with a level of care. And again, developers are very good at sort of sniffing that out as well. And so when we sort of saw Claude Code, we were like, two things. One, this probably should be open source. And two, it could probably be built with a lot more care than I think they were sort of putting into it. At least for the terminal UI, which is what we're sort of known for, I think we've done a pretty good job. On the open source side, I think mostly we've ridden the wave of all the open source models, so we can't quite claim sort of credit there as much. But at least on the agent side, I think we've really sort of doubled down on the thing that we'd wanted to do right from the get-go.
Cool. And then finally, it's interesting, both of the origin stories. To wrap up, I want to kind of just get one piece of experience from you that kind of made you think this way. Like, one of the things that happened to me was my first job was in the US, and when I came back, everybody was like wondering, like my first job after coming back from the US to Toronto, they're like, who is this very aggressive person at work who just wants to get shit done and then like get out of the office? So was there an experience, Simon, for you that shaped you into thinking, you know what, I can build like a world-changing company from like by myself. I don't have to move. I don't have to have a smaller idea. I can just build something as big as I want.
I mean, it kind of happened during COVID, right? Like
Okay.
it was sort of post-COVID, like the world had changed, and the infrastructure team at Shopify had been remote since the very beginning.
Yep.
And so it just felt very natural to me. It's like, okay, I want to, like, for this company to work, we need to get the best database people in the world to work on this. Doesn't matter where they are, we will just get the best database people. And the first hire was in New Jersey that I met in IOI in high school. He was on the Northern Macedonian team, and I was on the Danish team. And we met there. And yeah, one of the best database people in the world. And the other one was a fresh Waterloo grad who just shut down his company, who was now out of Vancouver but grew up in Kingston, and so he happened to be in Vancouver. And so the decision was made. We all grew up playing many video games in high school, and everything was in guild chat anyway, so this might as well be the whole company. We're very, very comfortable operating that way, and we get in person a lot.
Amazing. And then Jay, like, what made you think, hey, I can build something globally?
Yeah,
and
sort of
people all over the
similar.
world?
I think there was a shift at some point. It sounds like Simon had something similar too. It was like, we realized we were internet native, and it seemed like there was a generation of these founders of these companies that leaned on that to a degree that wasn't done before. And there are some very specific advantages, maybe this is post-COVID, there's some very specific advantages that come with being internet native. And when that sort of clicked for us, we sort of realized, oh yeah, the world is our stage, we can do whatever we want.
Amazing. Well, to sum it all up, you can just do things. Anybody can do this. Look at the good examples over here. Thank you, Simon and Jay.
Thank you, Farhan.